What does it mean to you for someone to be masculine?
Probably the best words I can share are these two words, a savage and a servant. That to me is a masculine man. A savage, and I don't just mean, violent with a desire to protect you from harm. That is mandatory. But also savage in his work, a savage in how he keeps himself mentally and emotionally sharp and dialed in. Savage in the way he loves. My friend John, Warrior Poet Society, John Lovell, he says a man should be a lion and a lamb. A lion in your work, a lion in your fitness, a lion in your mindset. But when you come home, it's okay to also be a lamb, to show your underbelly and, hey, it's okay to love me up. And so when we're a savage, when we can be a savage in protecting our family and our health and fitness and making money, just savagely going out there and doing it, getting after it, but then be a servant to our spouse, to our kids, to our neighbors, to our parents, to a friend. To me, that feels good. I don't want to just be around hey, you can call on me when you need protection or when you need someone to move your furniture because I'm big and strong. If you just need someone to hear you out and hold you and cry with you, you can call on me. Yeah. I'll be that servant. And I think that's what makes a masculine man, because if we don't have that lamb in us and it's all lion, it's a little too rough and tumble. If we don't have that servant in us, because throughout everyday life, the servant is needed more than the savage. Mm-hmm. It's good to have the savage. If we heard a very loud bang and explosion right now, God forbid, I would count on the men in this building to go out there and check things out. And God forbid it was something bad, we would have to do some savage things to make sure we're all safe and protected. But we need servant more than savage, but it's good to have the savage within. And I think also that creates a beautiful attraction to the opposite sex, because I think instinctively, in fact, one time when I lived in San Diego, I took myself on a solo date to the San Diego Wild Animal Park. Mm-hmm. And they had a gazelle. You know how all the animals that aren't going to kill each other are mingling together, right? So it looks more like the Serengeti. And they had this gazelle, but it had one of the horns were broken, 4 inches of the horn, so long horns, but one of them was broken, and he was by himself, in a cage, well taken care of by himself. I'm like, hey, how come that one's by himself? Any other injuries other than that? No, just that. But the female gazelles don't want to mate with him. They instinctively know he's no longer savage.
Something's broken.
Something's broken.
Yeah.
And so I think a good part of attraction to a woman is when a man has claws and fangs. He's savage, but his servant heart and mind can control the savage until it's necessary.
And I think there's also something, I say this to my husband all the time, I love that I'm your favorite person because you don't have a lot of people that you like.
Right.
And that you chose me. And it makes me feel like I have this special part of you that's just for me and our family.
Well said.
And I think that that's really attractive to a female.
Yeah, that's very true. Because once we're tight with other men, we'll joke around with them and cut each other down. And just recently, I had an event. There was a whole bunch of men at it and 2 women. It was a very physical experience. And myself and all the other instructors were yucking it up and being guys, picking on each other and making guy jokes to each other. And then one of the male participants in the event cracked actually a very funny man joke. Mm-hmm. And Nina was there helping out. And every one of us instructors turned to him hey, shut up, get back to work, start lifting those weights because you're not in our circle yet. You're not accepted yet. That's just a way of men. These guys I've worked with, I've lifted with, I've suffered with, you're not in yet. You can hear our jokes, but you can't bring one of your jokes in yet. There is something very special about that, right? Once we give him that right, or once, if I go somewhere and there's a group of men, I'm not just going to step in and start cracking jokes. I'm smart enough to know I'm going to hang out in the shadows until they've accepted me. And I'm going to work. I'm going to earn my right to be in that group of men. Hopefully they're formidable men. And then once they start busting my balls, then I can start busting balls. That means I've been accepted.
Right.
And just like that, also, it's like that with when a man chooses a woman, you can pick at me in ways that I would never let anyone else, pick the wax out of my ear or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's a very special thing that a man is allowing to happen because most everyone else will get the knuckle sandwich.
Do you think it's important for men to be vulnerable?
I do believe so. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing. And I say it about sex. I talk about sex a lot, but I think you can't have great sex unless you're truly vulnerable. And I think that's the same for relationships. And in many things, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable, which is super scary.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a very scary for men because we'll say something that's vulnerable and then we almost like look at you like, do you think less of me now? Do you think I'm weaker? Because a man will always choose to be respected over loved. If you asked a man, do you want a woman's respect or love? He's going to say, I want both. I want both. I, Bedros Keuilian, want both. But if you're like, Bedros, you could only have one, I would want the respect. And most men, because I did a survey of 34,000 men on my email list of just specifically men, 80 some odd percent said, I'll take the respect over love. And that is a very special thing. With that comes vulnerability. So if a man is going to be vulnerable with you, then he's going to look at you like, did I just lose your respect by shedding a tear and crying or talking about what happened to me as a child? Do you look at me softer now? Have you lost respect for me? You may not lose love. There's a chance that you might lose respect for me, and a man doesn't know how to handle that. And when we have the right woman in our life and they're like, no, actually, I'm actually deeper in love with you. Thanks for sharing that with me. Holy shit. Like, now I'll go conquer the world for you as a man. Yeah.
Right. I think that's another really good red flag that we didn't mention is respect, is that your partner should respect you.
Yeah.
And that should come through pretty easily. I think sometimes you may not notice the disrespect if you're not looking for it. But there's times where your partner may show you that they don't respect you. They love you, but they don't necessarily respect you. And that's the first break in that fence.
Yeah. You know, it's funny you say that. At the project, that men's personal development experience that I run, when I share that with men, and they go, well, what's a good sign to know that if my woman loves me but has lost respect for me? I go, when she starts treating you like her son and not like her man anymore. When she tells you to take out the garbage, when she tells you to do this, like you would tell a 10, 12, 13-year-old boy to do. And that's because you failed to do your part as a man. You failed to show up in a way that commands respect. Therefore, she has lost respect, and therefore she'll now treat you, because a woman, I think, inherently wants to nurture a man and, nurture his soft side, his inner child, right? But if that's all parts you're unresponsible, you're not doing your part, now she has to tell you what to do, like take out, she's treating you like her boy. You're no longer her man, and she's lost respect. She loves you, but she won't respect you. And they're like, oh my God, that happens to me. I go, great, let's fix it.
Yeah.
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 And it is something that can be fixed.
It can be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But he has to earn that. And then if she still can't give it, then it's a different conversation.
You talked about sons. What advice do you have for parents, fathers? How can you be the best father, especially to sons, I think, to lead an example as a man? What is your advice for them?
Every father owes it to his son to raise him as a man. And I'll explain why. There's a great book out there called Raising a Modern Day Knight. I read that book when Andrew, my son, was born. He was a little puppy when I read it. And in that book, I realized that men need a rite of passage.
Mm-hmm.
All throughout history. The Aborigines, as the young boy would turn 12, 13 years old, in their culture, the dad would find other men that he trusts in the tribe. They'd wear these demonic masks, and the wife was in on it, and they would come inside the house, and they would kidnap the boy from the mom, and the mom would put up a fight, like, no, don't take my boy, don't take my boy. And the dad, who's got this mask on, along with a handful of other men, they're yanking the boy away, and finally mom lets go on purpose, and they take the boy out there, and they start beating him up, and they start letting up a little bit so that the boy can fight back. And of course, once the boy fights back, the dad takes off his mask, exposing his face, and then puts it on the boy, says, you have now won a seat at the table for us to groom you as a man of this tribe. And that's just one experience. There's literally, there was another tribe, I forget, in New Guinea, that would take a young man, again, the fathers, when the boy was 12, 13, 14 years old, as the sun was going down to the edge of the forest, dad would take his knife, he'd cut a little bit of flesh on that boy, make him bleed, hand him the knife. So you go into that forest and go defend yourself, and come out in the morning when the sun is out. Myself and the other men who I trust will be right here waiting for you. The blood is obviously to lure other animals, and he has to now defend himself and find shelter throughout the night and come out. And when he comes out, dad says, congratulations, that was your rite of passage. You have now won a seat. Not you're a man. You have won a seat at the table for us to start grooming you as a man of this tribe, and no longer as a boy, right? You're no longer part of the women and children. You're now part of the men. That's what that book shared with me. And it said to create a rite of passage. And the conclusion that I came to was, Oh my gosh. Well, why don't they have that for women, a rite of passage? Oh, there is one. When a young lady, when my daughter Chloe got her period, her boobs start to grow and a very physical thing happens. She feels pain and a very physical, scary thing happens. I'm bleeding. Mom says, honey, you are now a woman.
Right.
You blossomed into a woman. This is it. There's no event like that that happens to a young man to go, aha, I am now a man. I have now won the seat. So fathers have to create that rite of passage. This is why knights had squires, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, it was a knight's job to groom that young man, that squire, into a knight, into a savage servant, a gentleman, a chivalrous knight. And it was that squire's job to clean the horse and the armor and sharpen the blade, etc. And so it is a dad's job to teach a man, a young boy, the way of men, which essentially, from Jack Donovan's book, The Way of Men, strength, that's mental, emotional, and physical strength, honor, as in, hey, we all have each other's back. You're not going to betray me as a fellow man of this tribe and sell me out. Honor, right, which is respect and loyalty. Strength, honor, mastery. Maybe you don't have the strength. Can you at least make a club, a trap, a bow and arrow? Mastery of something. Make shelter for us. Strength, honor, mastery, and courage. If the poop were to hit the fan, look, man, we've got the strength. We trust each other. You've got the ability to make bows. And this group of us have the courage to go into battle. That is what other men are instinctively looking for in other men. That is what all men are looking for other men. And it is a dad's duty and responsibility to groom that young man through that post, as that young man's growing up. I remember we'd travel as a family when my kids were smaller, and me and Andrew and the ladies would go to the restroom. Me and Andrew, we're waiting. I go, son, we wait with our back against the wall in the airport, everywhere. He goes, why? I go, now we don't have to worry about 360 degrees. We only worry about 180 degrees. Oh, got it, Dad. Till this day, he's 19 years old, does jujitsu, plays music, a savage and a servant. Beautiful, athletic young man, well-spoken, could be violent as heck, and very self-aware. And so if we don't teach our young men or young boys to become men, as dads, we have failed a young woman in the future, because he's going to become somebody's husband.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to become somebody's father. And now that young boy that you allowed to become an adult, but still maintain his boyish ignorance, is a liability to that woman and to those children. And I don't believe there's room for that. That's how we almost lost this country in recent times.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so important, whether it's a son or a daughter, but to raise them with the right values, because they are going to be someone else's parent, hopefully someday,
Yeah.
right? They're
you're either raising a
partner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're either raising a liability or raising an asset.
Yeah.
And they carry your last name, for crying out loud, son or daughter. When my daughter plays flag football, and when people I see number 3 and Keuilian on the back, my last name, I'm in the bleachers yelling and cheering, and I never played sports.
Mm-hmm.
To see my daughter playing flag football and just, being the number 1 scorer on the team just makes me so proud. She's got my last name. She's got a little boyfriend named Nolan, and Nolan didn't know how to open doors. And so she did exactly what Dad taught her when she was 7. She went and stood by the door. When Nolan's mom came to pick them up, she just stood by the door and waited, the car door. Nolan rolled down the window and said, aren't you coming in? She goes, no, can you come around and open the door for me? And that started because Chloe and I started taking Chloe out on dates when she was 7 years old, on a weekly date. And I explained to her what a man's responsibility is. And I said, listen, Chloe, you're only 7 years old, but when you have a friend who's a boy, these are the expectations you have of him. You know how Daddy and Andrew open your door for you? Yeah. Once you're in the car safe, then we go to our side of the car. Yeah. That's what your friends who are boys should do. I didn't say boyfriend or a future husband. She's young. She just can't process that.
Right.
He's a boy. He's a friend. That's his responsibility. And she has those expectations now. And in fact, when Nolan came into our life a year ago, she said, hey, Dad, can you take Nolan to the gym and work out? Sure, Nolan. Good to meet you. Do you want to go tomorrow? Sure. So we went, and Nolan had never worked out in a gym, and he threw up and almost passed out. Thankfully, he just threw up, and I laid him out on the turf, and he was fine. And I took a picture for Chloe and sent it to Chloe. I said, but he's a really awesome young man, but man, I don't feel like he can protect you if something happens at school, Chloe. Here we are a year later. Chloe sent me a picture of Nolan and her working out together. They're both flexing their triceps. The kid is jacked. She goes, Dad, it was that one workout that you did with him a year ago.
Yeah.
In other words, Dad, can you take him and test him for me? because those were the expectations that I had set. And so she didn't trust Andrew to test him because Andrew goes, I can take him and test him. Chloe, you go, no, I don't trust you. You're going to put him on the mats and probably choke him out.
Yeah.
Dad's just going to train with him. These are the things that men need to do for their daughters and their sons. So my daughter can have the expectation. And my daughter's a savage. I'm trying to get her in jiu-jitsu right now. It's been hard and pulling teeth, but at least she works out. She's athletic, and I'm sure she'll get into jiu-jitsu soon. But in the meantime, if we don't teach them, then they become a liability to this country, to the communities that they are in. And I don't want that. I don't want to breed liabilities. I want to breed assets.
If you guys enjoyed that clip from the Rena Malik MD podcast, make sure to check out the full episode right here.